of God, where everything is going to happen at, upon your death. So you have to understand that. You have to understand, one, why is it masculine and feminine energy? You have yin, feminine negative energy, yang, masculine positive energy. Why is that? What's going on with that situation? I talked about this in Saturn, Satan, Part 1. We talked about duality. And of course, the brain also has a dual nature. You have two hemispheres. You have the left side, and you have the right side. But you also have what's called the flax cerebri. It says the flax cerebri is a sickle-shaped fold of dura matter that lies in the midline between the two cerebral hemispheres. Its narrow end in front is attached to the internal frontal crest and the cristae galli. Its broad posterior part bends in the middle line with the upper surface of the tentorium cerebelli. So now you can see right here in the video that this is the flax cerebri, and this little part that comes out at the base right here, the back base, would be the tentorium cerebelli. Now, the flax cerebri is sickle-shaped, and that's one of the things you'll see, as I read, that they always pertain to a sickle shape. So when you look at it, you can see what it's talking about. So you have the flax cerebri, which is the sickle-shaped curve. You have at the back base the tentorium cerebelli. Right below that, right under it, you have the reptilian brain. So the reptilian brain is kind of sort of cut off by the flax cerebri and the tentorium cerebelli. So now we go back to the garden, and it starts to make sense. You start bringing everything together. That the garden is talking about the brain. The story is talking about the brain, if you haven't figured that out yet. So, you have in the garden, you have the garden dealing with the serpent, the reptilian brain, and everything, which will be right under the tentorium cerebelli and the flax cerebri, which is a sickle-shaped curve. Who do we see with the sickle? You see Saturn, the god of Saturn, Kronos, or Satan. Satan is Saturn. The Kronos, the crown, so we're talking about the head, we're talking about the skull. You have the sickle shape, which we know, the Grim Reaper, or the god of Saturn, Kronos, always has that sickle. So it's telling you that we're talking about the brain. And you start getting into the whole thing, and you start looking at the story more deeply, more esoterically, and you can see it's talking about the brain. You have the two hemispheres of the brain. You have the right and the left. You have the split. You have the reptilian brain, and then everything starts to fall in place. So the reptilian brain consists of your brainstem, you have the medulla oblongata, you have pons, and you have the cerebellum. Now the cerebellum is referred to as the little brain, small brain, because it looks like a small brain unto itself. So when you look at the reptilian brain, it's separated from the rest of the brain by this tentorium cerebelli, by the flax cerebri. So when you look at it and you understand that it's separated by the sickle. So, when you think about it, Satan came, the serpent reptilian came, or the serpent brain came, and cut us off from the garden, cut us off from the rest of the brain. So you understand that this third eye, the reptilian brain, is cut off from the rest of the brain. So it's attached. So we fell in consciousness, and now we have a dual nature of the brain. You have the upper hemisphere, which would be considered heaven, and you have hell, which would be considered the lower brain, or the reptilian brain. Now you start to understand medically, what it's talking about, how it's pertaining to the brain. So now a dual nature was created once this whole cutoff happened. You have two different consciousness that was created. You have the subconscious and the consciousness. And you have to understand that 95% of what we do is controlled by the lower brain. The other 5% will basically be, your reflexes, or, the movements that you make subconsciously. Somebody throw a ball at you and you just see it out the corner of your eye. You duck at the last minute because the subconscious picked up on it at the last second. It wasn't you consciously moving. It's your subconscious that see everything first and then it moved. So that's the other 5%. So you start looking at the story and understand, well, wait a minute. We're talking about Adam and Eve. We're talking about the brain when we're talking about them. So now, when you begin to understand, consciousness, understand one, consciousness shapes reality, plain and simple. So your consciousness is going to decide what your reality is going to be. I always talk about how it is our consciousness that is driving reality. It's our consciousness that's shaping the direction that people go in, plain and simple. So if you think in the beginning, having one consciousness, one purpose, one direction you're supposed to be going. And that's what it is. You have this purpose, you have this direction that you're going straight, you're going true. Then something comes and changes that. Something comes and changes your purpose, changes your direction. That would be considered evil. So everything that was going on with the ancient Egyptians was based off of truth, ma'at, truth and justice. Everything. Because when you have truth, truth is truth. Anything that hinders truth is false. If you take something that's true and change it, you're fabricating truth. But no matter what, the fact still will remain. The truth will be the truth. If you change it, that is evil. Plain and simple. So, when you have Satan, you have God. Remember, they was together at one point. God and Satan was together. Then Satan rebelled and he was cast down away from heaven. So he was cast to earth, which would be lower. So this is all, again, talking about the brain. So you have with the garden, the serpent comes and he basically changes the purpose of Adam and Eve, the point, the direction that they were supposed to be going. And he gave them choice, as I said before. So you go from a consciousness that is creating one path. And then once that one path is altered, you have now a dualistic reality that is created. You have a dualistic consciousness that is created. This is symbolized by the dual brain, left side, right side. Also symbolized by the splitting. We're talking about the tentorium cerebelli that separates the upper and lower brain at that back base. You have the lower reptilian brain, the higher brain, the highest hemispheres of the brain. This is what the Adam and Eve story is talking about. It's talking about the brain. So you have this separation happen to where you have a dualistic consciousness created. A dualistic consciousness is going to create a dualistic reality based on what? Choice. Plain and simple. So now you had this one purpose that you were going into. And now what does the serpent do? The serpent came in and said, no. If you eat off this fruit, you won't die. He gave them choice. So now choice is what? Choice is a construct based on a dualistic reality. So again, anything that you would do that is against truth would be bad. So they had a choice to follow. They had to choose. So if you have a train, the path is laid out for a train. The tracks are there. The train is going to follow its path no matter what. And if you come in and you step in and you alter those tracks to basically go in the circle, to go away from its path, its destiny, what it's supposed to do, that is evil. And this is what we're dealing with. So you can see the dualistic nature of the Bible, of Satan and God. This is what happened. Satan came and separated us from the path. Now again, there's so many different aspects to Satan. So you can look at Satan as good and bad. But he separated us from our purpose. So, the Matrix. You can see what Smith was so pissed off about. Smith had a purpose. His purpose was basically to do his job, to do what he was doing. And then now when Neo came and destroyed him, what did he say? I knew what I was supposed to do. I knew I was supposed to return, but I was compelled to stay. He was compelled to disobey because he had choice now, given to him by Neo, which dualistic nature in Neo. I said we'll get more into the Matrix because Neo could be looked at as good and bad. Now, in the aspect of Smith, Neo is looked at as bad. Neo, you could say, is the serpent. But as I said before, there's Gnosticism inside of the Matrix. This would be the Gnostic view of Neo being Jesus, or Neo being, Satan. So now he gave Smith choice. He could choose to obey. He could choose to go back to the source, but he felt compelled to stay, to disobey. This is what's going on. It's going to be hard for a lot of people to grasp what I'm saying, because you don't realize that, one, every single thing that you do in life is based off of choice. You don't know your true purpose. You have been separated from your true purpose. So you are following choice. You have to choose what school to go to, where to work, what to eat, what to wear. You have to choose where to live. All these things are predicated upon a dualistic reality that somebody has created for you to choose from. Plain and simple. And when you understand the Matrix, every aspect of Neo, from the first movie to the last movie, everything he did was about choice. He had to choose. And his decisions shaped the reality of what was going to happen. Imagine if Neo would have chose the other pill. Imagine if Neo would have chose to get out the car and keep going. You have to think about that. Everything was based upon choice. If he would have chose the other door. So this is what it's trying to tell you. Life. It's a dualistic reality that has been created for us to choose. And our choices is either going to be staying with the truth, which is Ma'at, which is what the Egyptians tried to tell you. This is the direction you should go. Anything contrary to that has to do with material, evil, Satan. Plain and simple. So you have to understand, true freedom doesn't have dualistic consequences. So you have this reality that's based on laws, rules. Just like in the garden, you have God giving laws, rules. You can do this, but don't touch that. True freedom doesn't have dualistic consequences. So this is what it's trying to hint to, as far as there's something being up with God. So when you understand that your path has been hindered, your purpose has been cut off, and you have been basically put into a position, just like I described with the train, where you're going in a circle. You're not following your true path that was laid out for you to follow. You are going in a circle because somebody has an agenda. And this is what's going on with us. We have been taken off the path. Now we have this dualistic brain, this dualistic consciousness that's creating this dualistic reality, and you have everything that is opposite of truth, of course, being bad. So in that, when you start looking at everything that's going on, everything that we're doing, you can see the evil in it. You can see how, everything is based upon your choice. Choose to work hard and do what's right. You can have a good life. If you choose a certain group of friends, you might have a bad life. If you choose this, choose that, choice. Choice is going to shape your reality, plain and simple. So I always tell people, you are in the position that you are in right now because of the choices you made in your life. You can sit back and blame it on him, her, what have you, but it's really the decisions that you made that put you in this position. You didn't follow the true purpose. You didn't follow what you were supposed to follow. So we have this path put out in front of us that says, go to school, learn what I want you to learn the way I want you to learn it, and you'll get a good job. Get a good job, just work there, do what you were told, make money. You get a vacation once in a while. You get to, make new friends and talk to people, what have you. And then when you turn 65, you can retire. We'll give you a little bit of money to sustain yourself because you are not able to physically do work. So we'll give you some money until you die. Then give all the stuff that you worked so hard for away to your family members, and we're going to put you in the ground, and you're going to repeat the cycle. Thus, the train going around and around and around. That is not your purpose. So again, you have been taken off the path of truth, of Ma'at. Anything that you do that goes against that is evil. So since, again, 95% of the choices that we make is decided by Satan, the lower brain, you understand Satan is the God of this world. Satan is running everything. You are evil because you're going against your true nature. You are antichrist because you're going against the body. You're going against yourself. Everything is there, right there in front of you to break down and start understanding these principles. There's a lot more to the garden as we'll get into. But you begin to see what it's talking to or what it's pertaining to and how it's dealing with the brain, how it's talking about consciousness and everything else. It's a lot to get into. It's a lot that's going to be tough for people to figure out. But I try to break this down so you can understand and get it. So now Adam and Eve before the fall, they was naked. They wasn't trying to impress nobody. They wasn't worried about any clothes or anything like that. They didn't have to worry about rent, bill, disease, death. They just ate, lived in bliss and just existed, plain and simple, until they was cut off. They was cut off. They fell. So Adam and Eve is symbolizing the dualistic nature of the brain. As I said, the story is talking about the brain. They are symbolizing the right and left brain. They are symbolizing masculine and feminine energy. Feminine, negative energy. Eve is the one who ate the fruit. Remember, that's why she is the one who ate the fruit. Negative energy, masculine, positive energy. If you have a balance, then you have one goal, one purpose. But they was cut off. Now, their purpose was basically what God wanted them to do. The Bible says He created man to basically till the ground. So just like she says in the Matrix, there's a difference between walking the path and knowing the path. When you know, you just know. Knowing is just knowing. There's no way you're going to deviate from something that you absolutely know unless you have a purpose, unless there's a point to it. So Adam and Eve really didn't know their purpose. They didn't know what they was there for. They didn't have too much knowledge. They were humans. So it's trying to give you a hint there about what was going on in the story when we look at Adam and Eve. So now another aspect of the story, esoterically, is when you look at Adam and Eve before the fall. So you have to think about it. And this is how people think in esoteric circles. One, what was Adam and Eve before the fall? What were they? They were human beings. A lot of people, when you start reading the story, you start getting into it, you start looking at it and saying, well, a lot of church people say, well, everything was right with God and they were perfect and everything was cool. And, and the way I'm describing it to you, exactly the same way. Before they fell, they just knew bliss. They just knew everything was cool. There wasn't worried about being naked or anything like that. Everything was just fine. But they were humans. They lacked knowledge. It's only two people there. You don't understand that clothes exist. So there's no reason for you to be ashamed because you don't understand what a shame is. Adam and Eve was two humans that lacked knowledge. Plain and simple. What were they before the fall? They were basically fabricated. They were created man. They were altered humans. So when you look at, as I talked about before, in the beginning of Genesis, when God said, let us create man in our own image, and they went off, Male and female created he them, and he blessed them and said, basically, go be fruitful and multiply. And then you have Adam and Eve created. And we talked about this before, how you had seemingly man created before Adam and Eve. And then you had Adam and Eve that was created from the dust of the ground that seemed to be a fabrication of man, an altered man, an altered beast, when you think about it. So when you look at the aspect, when you look at it in this aspect, and you say, well, there's no way Adam and Eve could have been fully conscious before the fall. Because you'll look at it and say, well, Adam and Eve was one, they was conscious before the fall, before they disobeyed, everything was right, everything was cool. Well, they couldn't have been conscious. They couldn't have been fully conscious. They couldn't have fully been one. And this is another aspect you got to look at. As I said, there's many aspects to the story. Esoterically, you have to understand them. So this is one of the aspects. But they couldn't have been one. They couldn't have been fully conscious, because if they were, they would have understood what was going on. Because to be fully conscious is to be connected. You are connected to the universe. You are connected to information. They would have understood what God was, who he was, and what his agenda was. They would have knew what was going on. And you have to understand and look at it esoterically and just think, one, if this is the same God that created the entire universe in 6 days, what does he have to be scared of? Why would he be scared of Adam and Eve eating the fruit? For what? You created them. You are the universal creator. You are God all powerful. Didn't you put the spirit in these men? What do you have to fear of them eating the fruit? Think about it. So it's trying to give you our reality, what we're going through. It's trying to show you that we are Adam and Eve. We are dealing with that same aspect. You have this God that took Adam and Eve and took away their purpose, whatever their true purpose was. Put them in a garden and said, till the ground. And now everything that he does, the rules he's instilling, is as if it's God. As I said, the God of the Bible is telling you it's the same as this government system, who's taking you away from your purpose. So if Adam and Eve was truly conscious, they would have understood this. But there's no reason for this God, if it's God, to be fearful, to be worried. And you got to think about it. So when you look at the story, you have God being so fearful that, one, if they eat the fruit, they're going to become like gods. Meaning, one, and you got to think about this as well. If you have a gun, okay, let's just say you're in a room and you're in a situation. Somebody has a gun. You do not. You will be worried. You will be fearful of your life. It's just two of you. He has a gun. You don't. You will be scared in that room. You understand what I'm saying? Now, if the same situation happened, but both of you have a gun. He has a gun. You have a gun. There are infinite places to hide and shoot and have a good shootout. You have a 50-50 chance of getting out of there alive. You are less scared now. You are not as scared. You are not as worried about the situation because you know you can defend yourself. You know that you have a choice. You have a chance to survive. You understand? So we're talking about God, who is supposed to have an army of angels. You know, the biggest weaponry you can name at his disposal. What does he have to fear? So if he was worried that Adam and Eve would become as God, like him, meaning I got a gun, you got a gun, he shouldn't have been as fearful. It's more likely that he was worried about them becoming gods and becoming more powerful than him because they are the true gods. He is a fabricator. He is just somebody who manipulated who they really are and changed their reality to control them. But in reality, he is not as powerful. That is one of the deepest esoteric aspects of the story that it's giving you, that it's trying to convey to you. And it's us. It's our story. It's what we're going through. Because we see how our reality is being manipulated to keep us from our true path, our true purpose. And they do so very, very hard, very deeply. So many things that they put in our way that's crazy to keep us away from our true purpose. If it was as if we would be on the same level, they wouldn't be as scared. Now, I made that connection in Saturn, Satan, part 1, how the government is in the position of God, in the role of God, specifically the God of the Old Testament, the God of the garden, the God of these rules. So if you understand knowledge is power and what knowledge is, and that in reality, in our reality, that it's going to be knowledge that's going to help us obtain our true purpose and what we are meant to do. Knowledge is going to do that. Of course, you will hinder us and cut us off from it. So when we look at history, when we look at everything that we have been told, everything fits and makes sense how the history books have been changed. History has been changed. Things have been, taken away and covered up and altered. Monuments have been destroyed. Civilizations have been wiped out. People are killed all the time to cover up knowledge, facts, anything that's going to lead us to our true purpose. It's just that simple. So looking at Adam and Eve's story, you got to understand they were altered. They were regular humans. It's one of the aspects of the story it's trying to give you. Humans that lack knowledge, if they had that knowledge, they could move forward. And you got to look at how, the brain is altered, how the story is trying to tell you it was altered. The brain is altered. Serpent came down, altered the brain, representing the reptilian lower brain. The brain has been separated from God. The serpent, Satan, separated from the higher God. Everything in there fits. Is trying to tell you that was done purposely, that's something that was done to hinder you, to hinder us. And now, when you look at it as if having this oneness, meaning having this one consciousness, this one brain, this one direction, is symbolized by what Adam and Eve was doing before the fall. You have to look at it and say that their direction still was given to them. It was given to them. They wasn't told to just go. Be fruitful and multiply. Go. So when you look at our history and you look at, pre-dynastic times, you look at what was going on before, we look at the dynasties in Egypt. As I said before, it seems like there's a civilization that exists that was far advanced. Everybody's in agreement on that. Nobody really debates that. So when you talk about these people that existed, who basically Atlantis and Lemuria, what have you, and these beings who the Egyptians describe as being gods, before us gods walked on this earth. So if you think about it in that aspect and think, well, maybe if they wasn't altered, maybe their brains were different from ours. Maybe they didn't have the flax cerebri or the tentorium cerebelli. Maybe that bone was missing, was gone, and they had this different brain, this connected brain. If you think about that, think about these people and how they must have looked and how they must have been different from us having this knowledge. So they call them the gods. And that's basically what we would be if we were one. We would have this different purpose. Something happened. So it all fits with the war. There was a war. Something happened. This is what I was talking about in Saturn, Satan 6. War that happened. Something happened, caused the fall of man. We were altered, fabricated from original man, and we are what we are now. It's not too many people that's talking about this in this way, this kind of knowledge. You're not going to find too many people that understand this deeply esoteric understanding of the story. And if they do, they're Masons and they're in a position that they're not going to tell you this. We can get into all the other stuff everybody wants to talk about. Some people just want to hark on Kemet, and not really get into the deep esoteric meaning and what they was really talking about and what's really going on. So I get some people that say, oh, my stories are kind of far-fetched. But everything that I'm giving you, everything that I talk about and tell you fits. It fits. It's there. Some of you may agree, some of you may not. But it fits. And there's no other way you can work the story to fit our reality other than the way I'm giving it to you. Plain and simple. And it's not to pat myself on the back or anything like that. It's to tell you to pay attention to who you think you're learning from. And the stories and the messages that they're giving you, because they're put out there to hinder you, to confuse you. This is the story. This is what it's talking about. So we got to, again, look at the Garden of Eden story, the whole flax cerebri, the tentorium cerebelli. And the flax cerebri, when you look at a flax is a sword. You take a look at it, you see the way it's shaped. It's a sword. And you have the flax cerebri, the tentorium cerebelli, that's cutting off the lower brain from the higher brain, from God, the tree of knowledge and everything like that. So it fits right into, you have the cerebri, cerebellum, seraphims, however you want to pronounce it. It all fits in that same name, that same sound. So remember, in the Garden of Eden story, what you have God send down the cherubims to do what? Separate Adam and Eve from the knowledge, From the tree of knowledge of good and evil, from the tree of life. And what did they use? Swords. Flaming swords. So it's giving you the clue, the hint. No coincidence that, it's talking about the brain, talking about the sword, the flax cerebri, what have you, dealing with a sickle-shaped sword. And that we're talking about the lower brain, Satan, which deals with Saturn, which the god of Saturn has a sickle, which is the sickle shape of the flax cerebri. I mean, come on, people. Come on. Put it together. And since I understood how important the body was, and I've been studying the body for years, and just studying the brain and studying our organs and everything like that. It's amazing. And it's I want to say that studying the body is equally as important as studying the Bible. Studying the body and studying the Bible. And it's one of those things where when you start to understand the body and start reading the Bible and then look at ancient Egyptian mythology and what they're talking about, how you start to connect those dots. You start connecting those dots because they didn't just talk about the apparent body parts, the arms and everything like that, which they did. They got intricate. They went in deep, as I explained before. So when you know about these little parts of the body and these little bones that we have and these little small nerves and joints and stuff like that, it's a lot to understand, of course. But when you know about it, things start to fit. We're talking about knowledge here. Knowledge, knowing. And if you know, then you can go. You can grow. And that's what it's about. And they're cutting us off from that. And that's what their job is. Their goal is to keep us on that one track, that circle. Running around in a circle, not serving our purpose. And that's exactly what we're doing. So everything else is a distraction. How do you get somebody to deviate away from what they're supposed to do? You distract them. Plain and simple. Here's hip-hop. Here's sports. Here's sex and girls and everything that's going to get you to step away from your true path, your true purpose. So it's another way of looking at this as well. And this goes into the dualistic nature of God and Satan being both good and evil. So now, as I said, they created a dualistic reality, a dualistic consciousness, and our consciousness shapes our reality in the direction that we're going. We was taken off the path of oneness, straight path that we're supposed to follow to get to our goal, plain and simple. But that's another way of looking at it. And this is when you start getting deeply into Satanism, esoteric circles or what have you, and you understand this, the other way of looking at it. And you have to look at it and say, well, one, give you an example. If your purpose is to go from where you are at right now to Antarctica, and let's say you've never been outside of where you're at right now, you've never been outside of that city or state or town or what have you. You've never been outside of it. All you know is what you picked up during your time there. That's all you know. And your purpose is to go to Antarctica, and that's it. So would you be cool with that purpose, knowing that I'm supposed to just go to Antarctica, that's it, that's the end of my journey, and live the rest of my life there? And some people might say, well, that's my purpose. That's what I'm meant to do. I want to fulfill my purpose. Other people would say, well, it's a whole bunch of other places to go and to explore. What about going somewhere else? And that's the thing. So now you have choice. Choice is follow your purpose.